Welcome to Sound and Fury Book Reviews. This is going to be a very different video because I'm going to be talking about a book that I wrote, and so this is not a review, this is something a little different, which I will explain in a moment. But first, I just want to say thank you to everybody who offered such support of my writing over the years, and who purchased a copy of What Branches Grow, who read it, who posted a review of it. I really appreciate all of that. I even appreciate people that just read my Facebook post and gave it a like, it's so nice to have support in something that you've put a lot of time and effort into, and I just really, really appreciate it. So thank you. Given it's the 1 year anniversary when my book baby, made it out to the world, I decided to do a video talking about my self-publishing journey. So this video is going to include tips for other people that want to self-publish and for other writers. So, my self-publishing journey. As you likely know from any time I've ever talked about this book, I started writing it in 2020. I started writing it in 2010. It wasn't the first book that I've written, but it was the first one that I thought was worthy of any sort of publication. I self-edited it probably every year or so about 9 times. I also set chapters as I wrote them to my friend Sam, my OG beta reader. I can't imagine how she slogged through that. She must have a lot of patience. So after that, in 2019, I was accepted into my graduate certificate in creative writing through Humber College, where my book went through another major edit, pretty much a developmental edit between myself and my amazing mentor, Connelly. She's the author of the fantastic book, The Change Room, and historical fiction, The Lizard Cage, amongst other things. She is amazing. You should really check her out. Here's her books here. She's just an inspiring woman. Anyway, she encouraged me to self-publish it rather than go through traditional publishing because she says that the Canadian market is quite esoteric when it comes to publishing, and I tend to agree. Canadian publishers like to publish things that are like high art, so I don't know if What Branches Grow is considered high art. I don't care. I love it. I just sent out a few queries to agents and publishers in the summer after I completed the program. So I decided, though, that if I didn't hear back by January 2020, I would publish it myself in April. So that was my plan. Obviously, this plan came to fulfillment. I didn't hear back from anybody, which is cool. So this was also my plan because I was pregnant with my second child, who was due in June. I was working on residential painting at the time, and my back was just killing me because of the pregnancy, and I couldn't do it any longer. So I was like, well, you know what, why don't I just take off, 5 months early, and then I'll work on my book. I also had to wear a mask all day because of the fumes, just to be safe, and little did I know that I was preparing myself for the future. So when COVID hit in late February around here, I had to somehow meet my self-imposed deadline despite the heavy fatigue that I had. The second pregnancy killed me. It just killed me. My first pregnancy I was mowing the lawn at 40 weeks, so this one I was lying on the couch just suffering. I also had a toddler, a 2.5-year-old toddler at home because all the daycares were closed, and that was horrible. I wouldn't wish that fate on anyone. I don't understand how stay-at-home moms do it with toddlers. I mean, the kid now, she's now 3.5, and she's way more manageable now because she'll do little crafts on her own, and she'll watch a movie if I need her to, that kind of thing. But 2.5-year-old? Oh my god. Anyway, I still managed to attend the Women in Publishing Online Conference as well in March of that year, which I highly recommend to anyone who's wanting to enter the publishing world. It answered a lot of my questions, and it gave really great advice. I'm really quite indebted to them because it really explained a lot. I then learned how to format using Word, and I taught myself to use Caliber. The formatting took so long, mainly because I had to check and fix all the indents, and I definitely missed some. This is also because I had to do it in half-hour stints when my toddler wasn't screaming at me, or, I had to do it in the evening when I was super tired, so that's kind of my excuse. So here's one of my tips for self-published writers. If you're not writing in a template when you're writing, apply one to your first self-edit, and then, especially if you're going to do your own formatting. If you're not going to do your own formatting, you don't really have to worry about it, but if you are, apply the template early, because then you're not, focusing on that rather than the words in later edits. So there's a tip for you. I also hired a cover artist. He was pricey, but he did a really great job. I mean, I love the spread. I'll show it up here. He also gave me full copyright of the images, so that's why my, Sound and Fury booktube has the same background as the book, because he let me have that. He also designed a logo for my website. He was really cool. The full spread, as I said, is just beautiful. I found him because I used to read his post-apocalyptic webcomic when I was back in university, and I really liked his style. I even own one of his prints I bought from DeviantArt, and I was like, I wonder if he would do one for me. So he did. And yeah, that was pretty cool. So here's a tip for you. If you want to sell your book to bookstores, at least in Canada, not on consignment, you need to have a Canadian price on the back of your books. I do not. I did not know this until a few months ago, so no bookstores for me. I mean, I could do consignment, but honestly, I don't want to, like, go through the whole rigmarole of that and then purchase 6 copies, and who knows if they're going to sell. I might do it maybe closer to December, depending, but it's not a huge deal for me. I'm fine selling them on Amazon. Another tip, if you're using Ingram Spark for wider distribution, you need to ensure that your cover designer uses their weird specifications. You need a separate cover for Amazon and a separate cover for Ingram, because Ingram just has these really specific, like, compliance things that you have to deal with, because they don't have anyone checking their work. It's all done by a computer, so it has to be exact. So make sure that you go onto their website and get those specs to give them to your designer. Chances are your designer will know this, but in case you're working with someone that doesn't usually do book covers, I highly recommend that you look into this, because it is very annoying, especially when your cover designer doesn't get back to you when you say that the cover won't work, and then you have to download a trial of InDesign and teach yourself how to use it just to fix one small thing that the designer could have fixed. So yeah, do that, please. This is another tip, kind of out of order, but if you want your book to be in Kindle Unlimited, you have to go with Amazon's extended distribution. This means you cannot have your books anywhere else. So if you want Kobo or Google or, you know, print copies to sell yourself, you can't have your book in Kindle Unlimited. And you should select no to extended distribution. So that's the kind of the trade-off. If you want Kindle Unlimited, you have to go just with Amazon. If you don't care about that and you want to just sell yourself, then select no to extended distribution. So I hope that helps. That was something that really confused me and confuses a lot of people. So back to my journey. So I hired an editor, but what I should have hired was a proofreader. Rookie mistake. I know the difference between these things. I don't know what, I mean, I was an editor and proofreader for years. I don't know what I was thinking. I can only blame it on COVID and my baby brain and everything else that was going on in my life. So here's another tip for you. There's different types of editing. So there's self-editing. This is doing it yourself, which you should do yourself a few times before hiring anyone else. You basically should do this and then send it to beta readers. And then if you need help with the story, then you hire a developmental editor. And this is someone that can help, you know, help if the story seems clunky or you're not sure what's wrong with it, or if the characters need a better arc. Like, they can really give you that kind of insight. But make sure they know your genre, because if you hire someone that doesn't, then they might be missing out on certain tropes or things that readers expect in those genres. So I highly recommend your genre. A copy editor. So this is what most people think of when they think of editing. This is someone that goes through and makes suggestions regarding phrasing and structure, checking for consistency, you know, asking questions about word choice. Sometimes they fix grammar. What they don't do is fix the nitty-gritty. So, and the thing with an editor too is that if you're self-publishing it and you're paying for them, they are giving you suggestions. You can reject these suggestions, but I highly recommend that you take most of them, because most editors know what they're doing. The thing is, so you have to have a good relationship with your editor and you have to trust them. So it is kind of a two-way street. But one thing I can't stand is when people are like, yeah, the editor gave me a bunch of dumb suggestions, blah, blah, blah. And then you read your book and you're like, maybe you should have taken them. And then proofreading, so these are editors that fix the nitty-gritty. They check for spelling, grammar, commas, dialogue tags, etc. This should be done ideally after formatting, but a lot of people do it before formatting if they're sending it out to be formatted. Okay, so due to my discombobulated baby brain, as I said, I published the book and some typos got through. How embarrassing. But I have two amazing fellow writer, I hope I can call them friends, Susan and Marthese, and they sent me a great deal of feedback, even going beyond the typos. And then in late 2020, I went through and I fixed all of these typos. I went through and did another deep edit of the book on my own, using all of their suggestions. And I also added a bit of explanation to a scene that a few people said was not confusing, but they didn't really think it was realistic, I guess. I think you should check out Susan's amazing sci-fi women's fiction called Callisto 2.0 and Marthese's mind-blowingly good Siege of Malta trilogy. Here's what they look like. I'm going to include links to them in my description, and I really highly recommend it if you like those genres. But despite the typos, Self Publisher's Review still gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and I'm pretty happy with that. So here's another tip. Consider setting aside a few $100 for an editorial review of your work. This is different than a review from like a blogger or any rando on Amazon, and you can put it in the editorial reviews section on Amazon. That's what that section is intended for. It annoys me when authors put like their friends' reviews in there because, to be honest, it looks unprofessional, and I kind of skip those books unless they seem really good. And I read a generous amount of self-published books. So there's 3 kind of big reviewers. There's Publishers Weekly that has an indie stream, but I recommend Self-Publishers Review or Kirkus Indie. And Whispering Stories. Whispering Stories, I'm a guest reviewer on Whispering Stories, and they review indie published books as well. So, I also submitted my book, as you know, to the 2020 Kindle Book Awards, and it won the top 5 category finalists in sci-fi. I'm pretty proud of my What Branches Grow. It even won despite the typos, so I'm like, oh man, imagine if I sent it in without the typos, but whatever. Top 5 is good enough for me. So the hardest part, though, is self-publishing, which anyone I think will attest to, is the marketing. My writing, as I said, is more of a hobby, but I still want to sell some copies, you know. As such, I made a website. I ended up loving the website. I'm tinkering with it all the time. I got Twitter and Instagram, and I got a Facebook author account, all the stuff you're supposed to do. But in truth, I use these things way less for marketing and self-promo than just enjoying using it. I love taking fancy photos of my books for Instagram. Here's a few that I did recently, and I made some really fun connections on Twitter. You know, I really like going on there. I kind of check it in the morning, and I'm like, oh, what's going on? I don't post a lot, but I comment a lot. It also inspired me to make this booktube channel, which, given how much I love to hear myself talk, you know, has become a new hobby. I'm kind of obsessed with booktube. I love doing booktube. I talk about my own books on it sometimes, but they're my babies and I can't help it, you know, they just come up. I try not to talk about them very often. This video obviously is an exception. Here's a tip. If you're serious about marketing and growing your presence, you should have all of these accounts at least 6 months ahead of time and try to get some traffic on them. Though I really suggest picking 1 or 2 that you actually enjoy using and focus on them. You know, talk to people, be yourself, and above all else, keep the self-promo to a minimum. I don't use my Facebook author page at all, to be completely honest. I just don't. It's just not one that interests me. I don't like going on Facebook. I do love Instagram, though, for book photos and other stuff. I don't know. I'm not a huge social media person, but I found that having to learn it for marketing purposes was actually kind of a fun experience. One thing I can't talk about is pre-orders or pre-launch marketing. I didn't really do that. I didn't do that at all. I didn't even know that was a thing when I published. So I don't have any tips on that, unfortunately, yet. I will be delving into that for my next project coming out in January. So I'm going to be making a video about that, probably at the time, about how pre-sales and stuff worked for me. So hopefully that is helpful for people. That being said, you know, What Branches Grow has not sold 1 billion copies or anything, but I'm just happy it's out in the world. It took a lot of courage, I think, to release it because given I've been reviewing books for over 10 years, I've seen some really mean reviews of books. You know, and it was scary to enter that place. I don't know why that worries me so much. I don't know these people, but I think it's just a kind of it feels like an attack, I think, when you get a negative review. But I will say I have not gotten any negative reviews. All my reviews have been at least 4 stars, and that's really happy. I'm still kind of waiting for the bad one to come. I'm sure there will be one. Someone will be like, this book has swears in it. I mean, that kind of review doesn't bother me. That review is silly. Okay, I'm going to explain a few things about the front matter, as we call it, which is everything before the actual content. So there's no spoilers for that, so I'm going to talk about that for a bit. There's a lot of allusions and references, both literary and other media and personal, in this novel. I love, love, love the idea of intertextuality. So this is where like a text meaning is shaped by another text. So it's kind of like the interconnection between similar or related works of literature, how they reflect and influence a reader's perception of what's going on in the story. So these references kind of add layers and depth to a text, as I said, and they bring you further in, or they're supposed to. I mean, granted, this is mainly meant for literature, and I learned about this in literary theory class, which if you've watched any of my review videos, you'll know that I quite am enthralled by. I mean, what I'm kind of referencing here more specifically is Julia Kristeva and Roland Barthes, but, you know, I love to apply high art criticism to pulp or general fiction as a hobby. I'm kind of a dork in that way, so that's kind of what I'm doing here, and I think it's kind of fun. So the premise. I've always loved post-apocalyptic stuff, and this novel is basically an homage to the genre. The world itself is my making, but there are allusions and references to things like Mad Max and Fallout and Book of Eli and The Road and The Stand, you know, hence my comments about intertext, you know. One reviewer said that I included too many tropes, and that's a fine critique. I can understand why you would say that. But I included them because I thought they were fun. There are many tropes I didn't include. There are no cannibals in my book, for example. So the title. I hummed and hawed about the title for years. The working title was terrible. I think it was just called like The Lady or something, which is so dumb. All my working titles are just awful. So I've read T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland many times, and I searched it again looking for a phrase that would make sense with the theme of the novel and be kind of ominous enough for my taste. And I came across the passage that's also one of the epigraphs. What are the roots that clutch? What branches grow out of this stony rubbish? Son of man, you cannot say or guess. For you know only a heap of broken images, where the sun beats and the dead tree gives no shelter, the cricket no relief. So I thought this was perfect in that it suggests a connectivity between things. How branches are all attached to the same trunk, but how branches also intertwine with other trees in the forest. I also thought the branches metaphor was like something stretching outwards, you know, something coming out of their shell, leaving their issues behind. A lot of What Branches Grow deals with overcoming guilt and distrust and trauma, and I thought that the idea of a growing tree really helped kind of bring about that theme. At least that's what I got out of it. And yes, I'm aware that The Wasteland is not about a literal wasteland, but a social one, at least in T.S. Eliot's version. You know, but the physical wasteland is also a social decline as well. And only surviving, there's no time to focus on art or culture or anything like that. And so many cultural things were lost in the Red War, which is the war in this book, as well as the good and bad parts of social organization. So I think that they tie in quite well. The second part of the epigraph is more literal about the story itself. You know, here comes another strange town, here comes another breakdown, and you can run forever, they'll catch you now or never. So this is from the wonderful Canadian band Stars. I used to listen to their album The Five Ghosts on my way to work all the time. It's still one of my favorite albums, and I have always really liked this song, which is Passengers. And they were so nice to let me use their work in my own. I requested copyright on everything that's in this book, and they were one of the only ones that got back to me. So I had to remove a lot of copyrighted stuff. I didn't realize when I wrote it that you can't just include song lyrics and book quotes in your book without requesting copyright, so I had to modify a lot of scenes, but Stars gave me permission, so that was really nice. The dedication, I can read this to you, I guess. This book is for Rob, my partner in crime, the Mad Max to my Furiosa, and to my darling Denny, the toughest one-eyed little bastard you'll ever meet. So this is my wonderful partner, Rob. We've been together forever, and he really is my anchor. You know, he really helps me with my writing in that he just lets me do it. And Denny is my pug. He really only does have one eye. He lost it in a fight. And he is the most stubborn, demanding little dog you have ever met. Denny's done a lot in his life. He's challenged a lot of big dogs. I'm showing pictures of him, but here he is, charging his way through the water to get to us on a boat. I really hope that you found that even slightly interesting. Thanks for watching. Yeah. Let me know in the comments if you liked my book, and if you did and you haven't given me a review, please give me a review on Amazon. I would really appreciate it. Thank you.